Let me see if I am on. No. I might say I'm never on.
No, you're on.
There I'm on. Good. That'd be my wife. Welcome. How many are here for the first time? One. Okay. How many of you all have gone back north? Nobody. I thought a lot of people did that. That's interesting. Anyway, start off with a joke. How many have eaten at Honest John's? See your hand. One, two,
How many?
three.
I've had a drink there, but not.
Ethan, Honest
That's
John.
right.
Honest
All right.
John?
Well, I'm gonna give credit
No,
where credit is due.
it's
This
a
is on the
restaurant.
wall. As you go back to the restrooms, on the left, there's a bunch of jokes here. I had time to read a couple of them, and I thought this one was pretty apropos for this group. So here's how it goes. This little boy, about 8 years old, goes to his dad, and he says, "Dad, how are babies made?" He said, Dad said, "Well, I'll tell you," he said, "it's a kind of long thing to go into, but I'll give you the short version." He said, "Well, first there was Adam and Eve, and they had babies, and then their babies had babies, and so on and so forth down the history, and your mother and I had a baby, and there you are." He was not totally satisfied, but he said, "Okay." So he goes see his mother. He says, "Mom, can you tell me where babies come from or how I got here?" And she goes, "Sure. Well, here, I don't want to go all the way back, but let's just start at a reasonable place. See, there were these monkeys in the jungle, and the monkeys in the jungle had babies, and they had babies, and some of those babies were apes, and those apes, and some of those babies were humans, and here we are. You're here, you're human." He goes, "Okay." So he goes back to his father. He said, "Dad, you lied to me." He goes, "No, son, I wasn't lying to you. Your mother's talking about her side of the family." Okay. Next time you're in Honest John's, check it out on the wall in the way of the restroom. I got another good one, but my wife said I should not tell that one.
He said, "Have we been in Honest John's?" He says, "No, we have a restraining order keeping us out."
Would that be because of they know you're not honest, or? Okay. Well, who's honest? Hold your hand up. I didn't think so. Okay. All right. Mr. Jim Warren did a great presentation about, I guess, 5 or 6 weeks ago on evidence for evolution. Now, I spent one session showing how I didn't believe or agree with a lot of the assumptions that were made in his presentation. So I'm going to spend this time with the second part of it, because there was so much good information that I was not able to really review it and discuss it. So this is going to be probably a little less lengthy. First of all, if you haven't signed up and you want to get on the email list, see Sharon over there. Sharon is the brains behind this whole operation. She just says, "Get something together and I'll take care of everything else." So that's what I do. All right. Evidence for Evolution, A Skeptic's View, Part 2. Let's start out by reviewing the word evolution is kind of a vague term. And just for your information, I've never met anyone who is a creationist, if you know what a creationist means, that didn't agree that evolution does happen. Okay? We're going to talk about micro and macro evolution, and we've done this before, but it's a good review. Microevolution refers to varieties within a given type. Change happens within a group, but the descendant is clearly not the same type as the ancestor. Is clearly of the same type as the ancestor. Sorry. This might better be called variation or adaptation, but the changes are horizontal in effect, not vertical. So would you go from one dog to another dog, or a cat to a cat, or something? You don't go from a cat to a dog. That's in microevolution. Such changes might be accomplished by natural selection, and we'll talk about that later, in which a trait within the present variety is selected as the best for a given set of conditions, are accomplished by artificial selection, such as when dog breeders produce a new breed of dogs. And as you probably know, dogs all came from wolves, the history of the domesticated dog. And man decided to make all kinds of dogs, big, small, fuzzy dogs like our little Maltese, fuzzy white, fuzzball. And some people, anybody have a big dog? Like a retriever or a lab or anything? Okay. And then also there's a study about house finches, or not house finches, house sparrows, that in the north are much larger and their color is darker, and in the south they're smaller. But this is probably because of the environment. Heat would probably keep the bird smaller. Seems as though, and believe it or not, I think if you're a fisherman or a fisher person, the biggest fish are usually in the cold water, and I don't understand why, but they are. So that's microevolution. Macro, on the other hand, refers to major evolutionary changes over time, the origin of new types of organisms from previously existing but different ancestral types. Examples of this would be fish descending from an invertebrate animal, or whales descending from a land mammal. The evolutionary concept demands these bizarre changes. And here we have, usually when they talk about whale evolution, where whales were actually come from land mammals, okay, fish came out of the sea, amphibians, then you get mammals, reptile mammals, and then they went back to the sea. This is the evolutionary story, okay, I'm telling you. They go back and they start out like this little guy, called Indohyus. He's about 10 pounds. He's about 24 inches long, based on the fossils that they found. And that's a blue whale, and he's 800,000 pounds, and is 400 feet long. No, it's 80 feet long, excuse me. So this is the story of macroevolution as told by evolutionary theory. Okay? We've gone through this before, but I'm just wanting to make sure you understand what we're talking about. Yeah, Bill?
Do you believe that there's a clear line, a black and white, clear line between macroevolution and microevolution, or do you think there's some blurring along?
What I would have, this next slide tells you something about that, but I would have to say that, of course, I do believe there's a line. And the reason I say that is because microevolution is obviously true, and macroevolution is obviously not true. So yeah, there's got to be a big line there. That would be my opinion. You asked my opinion, right?
A sharp line, yeah.
A sharp line, as sharp as you can get from one that's true and one's not true. So, in other words, I say there is no credible evidence, scientific credible evidence for macroevolution. I've said that so many times. I'll say it again. Evolutionary biologists believe that there is no distinction between micro and macroevolution. Their theory is that macroevolution is simply microevolution on a larger scale. Scientists that are skeptical, that would be me, although I'm not really a scientist, but scientists that are skeptical point out that there is no verified scientific evidence of macroevolution and that none of the claims of macroevolution are testable. Okay. Jay, since you came in late, you get to do the rest of this presentation.
Okay.
All right. So we've had this discussion many times, so, okay. All right, we're talking about a famous man, Stephen Jay Gould. Those who might study evolutionary biology would understand who this man is. He's an American paleontologist and evolutionary biologist and the best-selling writer of popular science books. Not science fiction. He writes books about evolutionary biology. After attending graduate school at Columbia University, he became a professor at Harvard, an influential popular science writer. He's held up fairly impressive. Obviously, he graduated from Columbia and he was a professor at Harvard. They don't hire people that aren't real sharp.